Thank you everyone so much for being here. We had over 200 people register for this launch event, which is extraordinary and really goes to show the importance and interest in this work. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all meeting from today. I acknowledge the Wurrung people of the Kulin Nations who have cared for and preserved the land from which we are beaming in from and where we work. We pay our respects to their elders, ancestors, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations and acknowledge that sovereignty over the land was never ceded. I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations colleagues, clients, stakeholders, friends who are on the launch event here with us today. I'm going to hand back to Tanya to get things started.
Oh, thank you, Steph, and welcome everyone. And thank you so much for supporting the launch of the report, Money Yarn Stronger Futures. I'm going to MC today. This groundbreaking report has been made possible through the funding that both VALS and Consumer Action have been receiving over the past 5 years through the Integrated Services Program. The fund was established by the Victorian Government in 2018 to provide community legal centres and Aboriginal legal services with funding to deliver integrated services within their communities. The Federation of Community Legal Centres administers the funding, and the impact the project has had on the lives of First Nations people in Victoria has been significant, and we believe will continue to be. So over the 5-year partnership with Consumer Action, VALS has built up its consumer law expertise and has provided approximately 465 First Nations Victorians with legal casework support relating to their consumer credit and debt issues. I think the report is a really good demonstration of how working together in partnership can lead to not only the identification of systemic issues, but we can work collaboratively together to bring about change. Today, we have such a fantastic lineup of speakers, followed by a panel discussion, which will be facilitated by Shelley Hartle, Consumer Action's First Nations Policy Officer. In just a minute, we'll play 2 recorded messages. The first message is from a First Nations woman who was one of the 9 VALS clients who was interviewed by Shelley for the report. Her experiences were de-identified in the report under the pseudonym Jane, and Shelley spoke to her this week and to record the message you're about to listen to. Jane's story, which she really wanted to share with you all today, will be followed by a message from the CEO of the Federation of Community Legal Centres, Louisa Gibbs, who has generously shared her reflections on the value of projects like ours. There are a number of them in Victoria, and also the insight she has gained after reading the report. So after we have played the recordings, I will introduce you to Nerita Waight, CEO of the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service, and then hand back to Steph to talk about the value of our partnership and their reflections. So once we have heard from all of our speakers, I will then hand over to Shelley, who has organised, I think, a fantastic panel and hopefully a discussion for you all today to bring to life the experiences of First Nations people highlighted throughout the report, and to try and delve more deeply into how we can all work on solutions that are culturally appropriate. So now it's time to hear from Jane and Louisa. So I'll just hand it over to Andrew.
I was in a lot of debt at one stage in my life, and I just didn't know who to turn to or where to go. And I contacted the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service to try and find out if I could get some support in the debt that I was in. It was a Part 9 debt agreement that I really didn't understand what I was getting myself into. And it seemed like a lot of money to try and get rid of a lot of debt, but it was like that there was, there wasn't any cultural understanding by the person from Fox Farms, the the debt agreement. So I was put in contact with a lawyer called, her name's Nicole, and she was just so supportive. We went through everything, about how it happened, how I got myself in debt, and how I ended up getting linked in with the Part 9 debt agreement. She told me about some things that I didn't even realise, that there were fees involved in that Part 9 debt agreement, and that that was suffering depression and anxiety at the time, and I didn't really think there was anywhere else I could go to apart from that Part 9 debt agreement. So Nicole walked me through every part of it. We negotiated with them, and she dropped my debt from 40,000 to 10,000, and and she was so professional, caring, understanding, and culturally safe as well. So as an Aboriginal woman, it's really hard to try and explain to people about the situations that we get ourselves in as First Nations people, and the intergenerational trauma that we have every day, and living and working in two worlds. So Nicole really understood where I was coming from, and just sat with me through the whole process, always kept me in the loop in a way. So she always communicated with me, and always asked how I felt about things, and she actually changed the whole trajectory of my life, because I just didn't think I would be able to pay 40 grand's worth of debt. And plus having the Part 9 debt agreement added on costs. So she told me about a few things, and I just feel that, if I didn't have VALS and Nicole, I would probably still be in a lot of debt, and that was 5 years ago. And now I'm basically I'm debt-free because of that. And she gave me options, so I was able to, like I said, lower the debt agreement from 40,000 to 10,000, and be able to pay that to all of the debtors that I owed money to, and they all agreed to it.
Hello everyone, my name is Louisa Gibbs, and I'm the CEO at the Federation of Community Legal Centres. And the Federation is the peak body for Victoria's 50 community legal centres. I'm really sorry that I can't be with you in person today due to another commitment, but I'm really proud and happy to be involved in this launch of Money Yarns Stronger Futures. It's a really fantastic report which everyone in the room and the broader community is going to learn so much from. This is an integrated partnership between Consumer Action Law Centre and Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service, who are two of Victoria's fantastic community legal centres. And they're working in an integrated fashion, because what we know is that problems don't arise in isolation. And when you have problems and we treat them not simply as legal problems, but with an integrated approach, we get far better outcomes for solving them for the people that we work with and the people in our communities. Something that's really fantastic about this report is that it's the third report of this partnership coming out. So we're learning as each of these reports come out about the fantastic work. And what we also know is we're using the evidence base to influence advocacy and change and services for people in our communities. This report's going to have a really strong positive impact on the way that we understand and work with the credit and legal issues and debt issues in First Nations communities in Victoria. This report really draws heavily on the personal stories and experiences of First Nations people with these issues, and also on the evidence and the data that we have. It's really clear from this report that there's a critical need to ensure that financial services and systems are culturally safe for the First Nations people in Victoria. It's really clear, so that's a fantastic lesson we're getting out of this report. Community legal centres across the state can learn from this integrated practice model, and I really thank CALC and VALS for the way that they're sharing and exploring ways to amplify the work that they've been doing in this space. I just want to say what a fabulous report. Something like this is the kind of work that can prevent things like the UPLA collapse happening again, because we bring this to the attention of the decision makers, we bring this to the attention of the people who can make a difference. I really hope you enjoy the presentations this morning, and what a fabulous report.
Oh, we feel really heartened to hear these messages of support, which serve to remind us of how important the work is that we all do. So thanking Jane and Louise. I would now like to introduce you to Nerita Waight. Nerita is a Yorta and Narrandjeri woman with Wurrung connections. Nerita was first employed at VALS in 2014 as a civil lawyer, and prior to becoming CEO, Nerita had experience across several teams in the organisation, including family and children's law, as well as policy and advocacy. Nerita has served on the boards of several organisations, including Elizabeth Morgan House, Wurrung, and the Australian Community Support Organisation. Nerita was elected as the First People's Assembly of Victoria, as a member of the First People's Assembly of Victoria in 2023, and was elected by the Assembly as Treaty Co-Convener in Victoria. So I'll now hand over to you, Nerita.
Thank you for that rather overwhelming introduction. First off, I just want to acknowledge the Narrandjeri people as traditional owners of the land that I'm on today here in Wurrung, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. Wherever you are joining us from today, you are on unceded land, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. As you heard, I have been at VALS for quite some time. I think I'm starting to outstay my welcome, but have been able to contribute in so many different ways. VALS was founded over 50 years ago to provide culturally safe legal and community justice services to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Victoria. We are a holistic, high quality and trauma-informed legal service, one that really reflects the intention of our founders. You know, we started off with just one lawyer, one CSO, and now we have grown to 7 locations, 1 in metropolitan Melbourne, 6 in regional Victoria, and providing not just criminal law services, but as you'll see in this report, extensive civil law services that really make a difference in that preventative end for our communities. We also have a 24-hour criminal law service that's backed up by the strong community-based role of our client service officers. And our CSOs have and always will be the first point of contact when an Aboriginal person is taken into custody through to the finalisation of the legal proceedings. Their role is wild and varied, and certainly isn't predictable day to day. We also provide community justice programs, which include support programs around family violence, community legal education, Bagaruk, which is our women's transitional housing support program, and of course our Aboriginal community justice reports to support stronger sentencing outcomes. We support community voices through our policy and advocacy work, whether it's things like raise the age or bail, or as again, you'll see today, areas intersecting with civil law needs. We're really happy that way back in 2019, we were able to establish the Integrated Partnership Project with the Consumer Action Law Centre. Not only was it a start of, I suppose, what we could phrase as a beautiful friendship, but we also were able to provide a senior civil lawyer dedicated to this work, which has made a huge impact on community. Our partnership is really important because supporting Aboriginal people with consumer issues is a critical part of addressing ongoing discrimination experienced by our people. As the report states, financial challenges can cause a decline in mental health, and debt compounds disadvantage and can lead to other preventable problems. And this is something we see far too often in our work. We see how financial pressures exacerbate issues around things like family violence and can lead to engaging in offending behaviour. We also see people juggling debts and overdue bills, which has been exacerbated by the cost of living crisis. And things like paying for essentials, whether that's medication, whether it's clothing, whether it's electricity or gas, all of those things certainly mean that you can be further entrenched in the cycle of poverty fairly quickly. We also see predatory targeting by corporations. For example, the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund, also known as UPLA, having preyed on Aboriginal people for over 20 years. These predatory practices not only deepen economic inequality, but also exacerbate social and cultural marginalisation within Aboriginal communities. What they also do, particularly UPLA having targeted people expecting to go through sorry business, is increased trauma to community, particularly for those who lost loved ones during this crisis. The partnership between VALS and consumer action is making a real and tangible impact on the lives of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander consumers. Before this partnership, we weren't able to assist as many clients as we wanted with consumer credit and debt matters. However, in the first year of the partnership, we saw a 75% increase in the number of Aboriginal people receiving consumer credit and debt assistance from our service. Since then, the civil team has been receiving nearly 100 consumer-related inquiries every year, and consumer law has become one of our major practice areas. That's even with our very, thanks to government funding, restrictive eligibility criteria. With Consumer Actions Assistance, VALS has built our legal expertise in consumer law. Not only has this enabled us to secure compensation, refunds, and waivers for our community, as well as jointly deliver important community legal education to community members and community workers, but it's made a real practical and tangible difference. In 2019, over 120,000 was either waived or received in compensation or refunds. Since then, that number has only continued to grow, reaching close to 150,000 in 2023. And that's not just loose change. We are especially proud of our youth law work in the lead up to the collapse in early 2022. We raised awareness in the community and helped as many people as possible to file complaints with the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, as well as working closely with Consumer Action to bring this issue to the government's attention. This helped pave the way for the Save the Sorry Business Coalition to forge ahead with advocating for an enduring resolution. We are pleased that an enduring resolution is finally in place, and communities can take comfort in knowing their sorry business is taken care of. Post the Voice referendum, and with truth and treaty processes progressing in Victoria, there's been a lot of discussions about how to drive change that not only empowers Aboriginal people and communities, but really tackles those big ideas. But partnerships like this one are a practical example of driving the change that the state needs in a really measured and integrated way. On behalf of VALS, I'm really very happy to endorse the publication of the third Integrated Practice Report project with Consumer Action Law Centre. The report represents a significant milestone in our partnership, highlighting the invaluable insights gained from our client stories, one of which you heard today. It explores and powerfully illustrates the systemic obstacles facing many of our communities in their pursuit of justice and economic empowerment. It makes important recommendations that we hope government and industry will listen to, and we will continue to advocate for regardless. In particular, we support the recommendation for the development of an impact framework that sets out outcome indicators and a shared vision for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's financial prosperity. After all, this is a couple of 100 years old. Improving the financial prosperity of our people is essential. This was heard in the evidence of Wurrung in the report by the Productivity Commission in relation to Close the Gap. It has been a long and enduring call. There is a significant wage gap that means that our people are overrepresented in the bottom fifth of the household incomes and underrepresented in the top fifth. The current cost of living crisis, alongside inadequate social security payments, is affecting many of our community members when they have to make a choice about whether or not they eat or they have a roof over their head. That puts them at risk of entering agreements with predatory lenders. It also puts them at risk of engaging in criminal behaviour. Building financial literacy and accessing culturally safe legal services are both important parts of setting up our people for success. Whilst a lot has been achieved through our partnership with CALC, we know there's still a lot to be done, with the consumer legal need for Aboriginal people across the state remaining very high. We look forward to continuing our partnership with Consumer Action to provide high-quality consumer law services to Aboriginal and Islander people across Victoria. And we also want to thank those who contributed to the report. Firstly, to Consumer Action Law Centre, thanks for working in partnership with VALS so that we can better support Aboriginal people facing consumer issues and systemic discrimination. This has not just been a surface commitment from CALC, but one that is being genuine and enduring. Most importantly, our clients whose stories have informed and inspired this report. Thank you for your bravery in sharing your stories. Thank you for choosing us to help you. We hope that we made a difference, but we also will continue to fight for your rights to be upheld. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nerita, and it's wonderful to have you here today, and we feel the same. We thank you for choosing us to partner with we're really proud of the partnership, and I think today is a good example of that. So thanks for your words. I'll just hand over back to Steph now, who will also provide some reflections.
Thanks, Tanya, and echoing your thanks as well to Nerita. It's a really special partnership, and we're proud to be able to work closely with VALS and see all of the impact that you're achieving with First Nations consumers. So I wanted to start by just acknowledging that this report is significant for lots and lots of reasons, and I'll outline just a few. Shelley has tipped in more than just her work hours into this report. Money Yarn's Stronger Futures, which is honestly so strong, Shelley. It's involved hours and hours of client interviews, research and reflection, and not only on what our clients and our stakeholders are telling us and teaching us, and what our frontline and policy work has been indicating, but more broadly, we've been candid on how CALC can develop a better approach to our service delivery, developing policy and advocacy asks, and making changes internally within our own organisation and practice. We're not the first to be thinking in this way, of course. The likes of VALS, Mob Strong, Financial Counselling Australia, ICANN, you're all incredible leaders and mentors. And we've learned so much from so many experts, including our panellists today. I also wanted to acknowledge Jackie, our First Nations engagement lead, who's on our panel today, and you'll hear from her, and Rod Jackson, who's joining us online, who've been incredible supports and teachers to us. And of course, I take a moment to thank our First Nations friends, partners, stakeholders who've given significant time, effort and love into this report and our partnership, in particular, again, VALS. Like Nerita, one theme that struck me in this report is just how harmful and lasting conduct and systems operated by business and government can be, and have been toward Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander consumers. The report underlines systemic barriers that many First Nations people encounter in accessing credit, navigating systems, and affording essentials. The report describes some of the harsh consequences of these barriers: disconnection from essential services, and for credit, the less regulated, more expensive options like pawnbroking, payday loans, and consumer leases become the reliable, accessible options. The report calls out the fact that while we introduce consumer protections over more forms of credit, there's a downward push of consumers into riskier products, and also an inadequate safety net when consumers enter debt spirals. This gap needs to be talked about and addressed. But I'll pause here and let Shelley and our panel describe the rich findings of this report. But finally, as an organisation, we've also heard the need to invest in this work. Much like Nerita was just describing, there's so much need. Our integrated practice project has been an important learning experience for CALC, and I hope VALS too. We've developed a way of working that continues to evolve. And the launch of this report marks the end of a discrete integrated practice project manager role at CALC and lays a roadmap for CALC's dedicated stream of outward-facing First Nations policy work in collaboration with and always learning from our partners. So we'll now embark on a bit of a review with VALS and what's next for our partnership, what VALS wants and needs from our team, be it our legal team, our engagement team, our policy team, our financial counsellors. And I look forward to watching the continuing momentum of this work and all that it achieves for financial empowerment and safer systems for First Nations consumers. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Steph. We've reached the time in the launch where I'm going to say goodbye to you all and hand over to Shelley. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Shelley Hartle formally. Shelley is a proud Wurrung woman and First Nations Policy Officer at Consumer Action Law Centre and a key member of our policy and campaigns team. Shelley has been managing the VALS Integrated Practice Project at Consumer Action since November 2022, working remotely from a town near Horsham, 4 hours from Melbourne in Western Victoria, on the lands of the Watchabolic people. So I'll now hand over to Shelley Hartle, who will be introducing panellists. And so welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Tanya, and hi everyone. So yes, my name is Shelley Hartle. I am a Judge Wurrung woman and the First Nations Policy Officer at CALC. I wish to acknowledge the Watchabolic people as the traditional custodians of the lands that I'm lucky enough to live, work and raise my family on, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations people attending, including any First Nations esteemed panel members who I will now introduce. Jackie Watkins is a jingly Mudbara woman from the top end and Consumer Action's First Nations Engagement Lead. Hi, Jackie. Bettina Cooper is a Bowendick woman, the strategy lead and financial counsellor at Mobstrong Debt Help. She is a powerhouse First Nations consumer advocate, leading the highly successful Save Sorry Business campaign, among others, and is joining us from the Eora Nation of the Bedigal people. Hi, Bettina. Danielle Abbott is a Wurrung Yoga. She is the Senior Manager of the ASIC Indigenous Outreach Program, was the project lead on the also successful Better Banking for Indigenous Consumers project, and is joining us all the way from Wotjoonunga country in Perth. Hi, Danielle, thank you. Nicole Stobart is the Managing Lawyer of the Civil and Human Rights team at VALS and has worked on this integrated practice project since 2021, helping hundreds of First Nations people in Victoria with their consumer credit and debt legal issues. Hi, Nicole, welcome, and thank you all so much for being here today. I am rather nervous, so I apologise for that. The main aim of our discussion is to bring alive for audience members the experiences of First Nations consumers, which we also worked hard to do throughout the report, and highlight the importance of incorporating the experiences of First Nations people in the reform recommendations and legislative changes that affect them. So with that in mind, I'd like to start by asking Jackie and Bettina, how can we make sure that the experiences of First Nations people are better reflected in the work that we do as consumer advocates, that regulators do, and that any stakeholders do to make sure any proposed solutions are culturally safe and appropriate? Jackie, over to you first.
Thanks, Shelley. I'd just like to acknowledge the Narrandjeri people on the lands that I live and work, and pay my respects to their elders and respect to everybody else, elders in the room. So one of the things, I come from a community development background. That's where I sit. And one of the mantras is nothing about us without us. And, you know, that's what I live by, and you know, we have to be out there in community. We have to listen to what's happening on the ground, and listen and really hear what's going on to help make you know, make those improvements. I think. So yeah, I think from there, I might actually hand over to you, Bettina. I've got a bit of back noise here at the moment.
Thanks, Jackie. I'd like to acknowledge the Bedigal people of the Eora Nation, the land which I'm on today, and my First Nations colleagues and First Nations people who are here today. Look, it's really about consultation. Asking one First Nations person what they should do about something is asking one First Nations person. It's about asking multiple people in the relevant communities what needs to happen to make something better, safer and appropriate for them. And we want regulators and banks and financial service providers to do true consultation. They need to engage with people in their community. They need to send senior leadership out to those communities to sit with them, to listen, to hear, reflect, and then confirm what they've heard to make sure they haven't misheard it. And then when they report on it, make sure it's in the First Nations people's words, not in the sanitised versions of their words. Our message is our message, not our message to be modified to make it a little bit more comfortable for other people. Have you found that, Jackie?
Absolutely. I couldn't have put it any better than that, Bettina. You know, and definitely just reiterating, like, you have to hear from different perspectives. You can't just assume talking to one Aboriginal person is that's it, you know. And you can really tell when an organisation has spoken to their community and really listen to them, and then you can really pick those organisations that haven't, and they've just decided to do, you know, whatever they want as an organisation. You can tell. So
and somebody's prepared to sit and listen to the truth telling.
Yeah, that's right. And mate, if you have to sit under a tree with the mob. I've done that. Get out there and listen.
Yeah, if I got one more second, I will say that last year, I think it was Mob Strong, Dead Help actually took with ICANN up in North Queensland, we actually took several members of the senior leadership out of ASIC up and sat them under a tree with some people in relation to the UPlay CBF, and that was, I think, a leap forward in that program, because it was suddenly we weren't telling the story, they were seeing the story, and that made a huge difference to the understanding and the progress we made in relation to that issue. And I challenge any banks or regulators sitting here today to connect with your local CLC who's providing First Nation services and ask yourselves, should we be going out and outreach to see and hear so we can learn?
Thanks, Bettina. Powerful words, and actually an excellent segue now to Danielle as well. Can you talk to us, Danielle, about how ASIC has been identifying issues in First Nations communities and how the ASIC Indigenous Outreach Program works?
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. So I would also like to acknowledge the Wurrung people, the lands that I'm joining you from today. So ASIC's had a dedicated Indigenous outreach program since 2009. The team was established with this dedicated focus on First Nation people's experiences in recognition of the fact that First Nations people can be targeted by predatory and unscrupulous business practices, which can result in really poor outcomes. One of the really important roles of our team is ensuring that ASIC, as the financial services regulator, is aware of and hears about that misconduct and that harm that's impacting on First Nations people, and to then work with ASIC teams, including our enforcement team, to take appropriate action. This means that our team's often undertaking a range of different engagements and outreach activities, some of those Bettina just spoke of. And the purpose of that really dedicated focus is to ensure that those experiences by First Nations consumers are really heard by teams across ASIC. And even our team being able to be on the ground and hear those experiences firsthand means that when we're having conversations with teams across ASIC, or when we're talking with financial service providers or even other government agencies, we're able to bring those experiences to the conversations and really leverage those voices as part of our role. Finally, just another note, a really strong and enduring step that ASIC took last year was to establish its own Indigenous advisory group. And it's a really important channel for information into ASIC. Commission has a really keen eye and focus on the insights that group brings to our organisation. It has a phenomenal membership group, some of those included on this panel today, and we're really grateful for the insights, guidance and contributions that group brings into ASIC as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Danielle. As someone who lives in a very regional area and works remotely, I completely agree. Being on the ground and speaking to people in community in their space was where all of the really important insights were gathered from, as well as that connection with community and building of trust as well. Nicole, I think something that VALS is really committed to is outreach, and we've partnered a lot on that. Can you talk a bit about that and how you've used outreach throughout this project?
Yeah. Thanks, Shelley. I'd also like to first acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I'm on, the Narrandjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm not a First Nations person and feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to work at VALS and with our clients. In terms of outreach, so VALS is a statewide service. Outreach has always been a big part of how we do things. It's about ensuring people have access to our service and therefore access to justice. And to do this, we need to be physically present on the ground with people. And to work towards this, VALS has been really growing its presence in the region. We've got community support officers and lawyers based in regional hub offices. In the civil team, we've now got lawyers in Bendigo and Warrnambool, which is really exciting for us. And then lawyers in the Melbourne office also do outreach. All teams have an outreach plan, and lawyers are allocated to certain regions that they travel to. Yeah, it's already been spoken about, but for us too, a big reason for doing outreach is to connect, to hear what's happening on the ground, increase awareness of the services we can provide, and it's doing this over lunch or a cup of tea. It's an environment that makes it much easier to talk about everyday issues, and it allows us to build trust and rapport, which means we're much better placed to provide our service and respond to the needs of community. And outreach with consumer action. We've done a fair bit of this over the years, which has been really good. We've attended various community events. We've held some Bring Your Bills days. During COVID as well, we ran some webinars as well to which was directed at community workers to try and encourage referrals to the service, given we couldn't be out there. We found it to be really important, particularly because from our experience, lots of people don't know that consumer credit debt issues might actually be legal issues that they can get help with. So I guess through doing outreach, we can sit down with elders, for example, we can ask them directly whether they've been bothered by debt collectors, or whether they've got family who have signed up with a rent to buy scheme. And it's also how we did our work in the ACBF U+ space initially. We had the lawyer who was previously in the role, did a lot of outreach, and in particular to Swan Hill, which was particularly hard hit by ACBF. And it was through attending events and building relationships that clients came forward, and we were able to file complaints and also get some compensation for people before the big financial collapse in 22. So it's always been a big priority for us, and something we want to continue to do.
Great, thanks, Nicole. And thanks everyone too. I feel like you all very clearly answered that initial question of what needs to happen in this space. So one thing that I think consumer action has learned along its own cultural journey, and that also came through from the people I interviewed, often we're advocating for and then seeing changes to regulations and tightening of obligations for, say, lenders, etc. However, the impact of those changes on the lives of First Nations people hasn't fully been explored. There may not be detailed consideration of what options people have if they can no longer, for example, access buy now, later products. I think Nerita touched on the broad recommendation earlier in her speech of an overarching organisation that is in charge of monitoring all of those changes in legislation and ensuring that they are all geared towards the financial prosperity of First Nations people. It's something I feel really strongly about as well. It leads into the next conversation, which is regarding cost of living and the shrinking safety net and increased reliance on fringe lending. So when I was interviewing clients, one of the themes I picked up was around how the cost of living crisis and the shrinking social security safety net was pushing people towards expensive and risky fringe lending and dodgy credit providers. I picked up that buy now, pay later in particular, but also consumer leases, pawnbroking and payday loans were all being used to just get by and for basic essentials. Nicole, I'd love to hear from you what you think of this. I know you're talking to a lot of clients every day with debt issues. I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. We see this all the time, unfortunately. So clients being pushed into accessing easy credit just to get by. And just last week, I actually had a client who I was assisting with another matter tell me that he was really struggling financially. And we got a copy of his bank statement and saw that he had been making repayments to, I think, 6 different loan companies, debt collectors. One of those was a $3,500 loan with cash train that he got out just before Christmas to buy Christmas gifts for his kids and cover other basic costs. And that amount, due to fees and charges, had already gone up to around $5,000. Another one was a $800 loan with Nimble. I think he's now owing over $1,000. He got that out just 1 week to make ends meet. Another one was a loan he obtained to cover the cost of moving houses with his family, and that had actually tripled in size since he got that out. So yeah, we do unfortunately see a lot. We also see clients using rent-to-buy schemes to purchase basic furniture items. Interestingly, in terms of buy now, pay later, we hear about that a lot. We know that lots of people, particularly younger people, I believe, are using buy now, pay later. Those matters don't necessarily come to us. Same goes for pawnbroking. We hear about that, but we don't see a lot of those. I think the report talks a little bit about why this might be the case, so I won't go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Consumer Action does definitely, our financial counselling team are reporting they're talking to a lot of people, including First Nations people, about buy now, pay later and pawnbroking as an issue. Thanks, Nicole. Danielle, can I go to you and ask, is this something that ASIC is thinking about in your team? Particularly, we picked up that there needs to be an investigation into the way First Nations people are using buy now, pay later products, and suggested that it could be ASIC that leads that. What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Shelley. I think certainly when you look at the range of investigations and outcomes that ASIC's achieved where First Nations people have been particularly impacted by harm or misconduct, many of those do relate to those high cost credit products and those fringe lenders. As part of our team's work, we certainly do hear that for those consumers with limited available income and the rising cost of expenses, there are a very limited number of options available when it comes to either unexpected expenses or, as you say, just surviving to get by through that time. So we certainly understand as well the attraction to buy now, pay later products. You know, there's a relatively easy sign-up process. There's convenient installment payment options, which are a bit more attractive than a really large one-off purchase amount. However, you know, those fees do add up very quickly, particularly when you have multiple products across multiple buy now, pay later providers, or if you just fall behind in payments. So currently, buy now, pay later products are not regulated as credit under the National Credit Act. So buy now, pay later providers are not legally required to undertake that affordability assessment, which is often a really important part of the regulated credit system. However, as I'm sure many people are very aware at the moment, there may be some changes on the way. There's draft legislation that's recently been introduced to Parliament, which would see these products, the buy now, pay later products, regulated like other credit products, with some modified responsible lending obligations. So ASIC is certainly considering its approach and issuing appropriate guidance to that area if that legislation does make it through. Our team in particular has certainly heard a lot about First Nations consumers' use of buy now, pay later products. So once those moving parts have landed, we'd certainly be looking at what we can do in this space and working with ASIC teams in that regard.
Great, glad to hear that. Thank you. Jackie, I wanted to ask you why you think that pawnbroking is a topic that's hard for people to talk about, and just ask you if you're seeing people relying on this as well as other fringe lending products.
Yeah, look, pawnbroking's a whole nother thing. It's you know, and I have commented in the report too around this being a silent borrowing. You know, for whatever reason, putting the goods into pawnbroking, it's easy. You're not asked about your bank statements. There's no judgment. it's just a matter of here are the goods. But unfortunately, the amount of money they're getting for their goods is probably 10% of what it's worth. And then when it actually sits in there, they can't get the item out until after 7 days. So if it's, if they just wanted I don't know, $50 for a day or two to get food on the table or do whatever, they can't just go and get it out after 2 or 3 days. They have to wait for 7 days, and by then they haven't got the money to get it out again. You know what I mean? So it just rolls over and over, and the interest rate on these pawnbroking, it's 40%. So if they miss that, if they don't get it out in time and need to roll it over for another whatever, they're paying 40% on it. It's disgusting. It really, really is. Can I just mention about the Afterpay? I was actually at my local Aboriginal health service the other day, and I was talking to 3 of the ladies there, and different age groups, 20s, 30s, 40s, and we had finance come up. I can't remember how the conversation started, and I mentioned Afterpay, and the young one said, "Oh, I love Afterpay," and the middle one said, "Oh, I'm actually buying a house. I'm using Afterpay, but I've been told that will affect my borrowing." And I said, "Yeah, that's right." And she's been advised, that she has to stop doing Afterpay. And the young one pipes up and says, "Oh, I'm never getting a house then." you know. And then the older lady said, "Oh, I love Afterpay." She said, "Oh, it's so convenient. It's on my phone. I don't have to go through my purse for the money or my cards. I just use my phone." And then I talked about the regulation of it, and the older one said, "Oh, well, that's good, if that comes through," because she said, "I was just given extra credit, like $1,000, without being notified." And yeah, so very varying attitudes towards it, isn't there? And yeah, I think it's really important that gets regulated. I don't know what's going to happen with the pawnbroking. It's I don't know how that can be regulated. I really don't. I hope there's some solution around that, because that's very harmful.
Yeah. Going back to the quote, or what you put in the report, which is that it's a silent form of credit, and many people aren't talking about it. I think that really fed into what we saw as the need for the public inquiry, so that regulators and decision makers and government can fully understand the impact of what is realistically an unregulated form of credit. I wanted to quickly ask you, I'm conscious we're probably going over time a little bit. I wanted to ask your thoughts though, Jackie, about NILS. And you talked about how people are really happy with how easy it is to get buy now, pay later. Why do you think we're seeing people leaning towards buy now, pay later and less towards NILS?
Yeah, look, twofold. NILS is a fabulous program, I must say, but there are some flaws. Some community members have said, "Oh yeah, I love NILS. I've used them before. It's great for me." And others have said, "Oh no, they're so judgmental on the phone, whether it's a tone of voice, whether it's what they're asking for." And again, like all the panelists have said, it's about building that trust. You have to build that trust first. Not just go straight out, "Oh, we need your bank accounts, we need this, and this." I mean, that's I think that just needs to be relooked at. How you approach it when you get a call from an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander person. How are you relaying that? These are the possible. This is what we will need, and how can we assist you through that? Whatever. The other thing is, I think, and we've touched on it, there's the working poor. So the actual, it's up to earning up to 70,000. That's the eligibility, earning up to 70,000 as a single person, up to 100,000 with a person with children or a partner. But what do you class as children? So I'll just give you an example of myself. So, you know, I've always been a single parent, but my kids are grown up, but they still live at home. One works, one doesn't. So I'm actually still supporting them. Are they classed as children? Do you know what I mean? So you've got children sitting in there. What are you classing as children?
And
I think that's a little bit, but I think that's a little bit misleading. Yeah, the eligibility when you bring it up.
How to get meals,
Yeah, and then as a single parent, so sorry, as a single person. So say if I'm on 73,000, but I've got cultural obligations, I've got family obligations. So, I'm looking after my elders, I'm looking after, my grandchildren, my children, and whoever else in the community, and so for me, that's they're my cultural obligations. So I'm just over that threshold. So God help if something actually happens and I don't have that money to, buy a new washing machine or fridge if that breaks down. I can't go to nils. Do you know what I mean? I think it needs to be relooked at. And then regionally, so do people have access to it out in the regions? Is it better off in your ACOs and ACHOs?
Yeah, great point.
I mean, these are things I think it needs to be relooked at, the whole nil scheme.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie. Really great advice for the administrators of NILS, I think, if they're listening today as well. I'm going to go to Bettina. I wanted to ask you, many might not know, but there are businesses that use Centrepay as another form of credit, especially in remote Indigenous communities. Can you talk a bit about this and what harms you've seen this cause?
Well, just for those who don't know, Centrepay is a credit system that's part of Centrelink itself. So Centrelink provides a credit facility for those people receiving pensions or Centrelink payments. And businesses can have a frictionless ride into signing up to use Centrepay as a credit provider. And that has led to businesses like ACBF UPLA being on there, which led to tens of thousands of people having money taken from them. And the thing about Centrepay, it takes your money out of your pension before you even get your money to spend on food or bread or essentials. Centrepay in itself, when it was first set up, was set up to help First Nations people meet their rent obligations. But it's lost its way. It's really become a vehicle for financial abuse for many businesses. Predatory businesses have signed up to there, and they are doing the same as other organisations we've mentioned, which is they're building a relationship with First Nations people and having them sign up often to high cost, low value goods, or to goods that they just don't have the capacity to afford because they're already signed up for multiple other Centrepay deductions. So we'll get a client statement and you'll see there's 2, 3, 4, 5 different Centrepay statements, Centrepay deductions happening, and there's very little cash left at the end for them to actually buy the essentials like bread and milk. Look, Centrepay has made some reality checks lately. UPLA, it was a wake-up call. They've had other wake-up calls. I've actually Mob Strong and Financial Rights, along with other consumer organisations, are part of a Centrepay reforms group at the moment where we're meeting with them fortnightly. And I will say there's some real truth-telling happening there. And there is change, but it's kind of like turning a cruiser ship in a little tiny river, and we're getting there slowly. And it's through complaints, people putting in complaints about the businesses, about the deductions that we're getting changed. But the problem is this. If I'm a First Nations person, particularly in a remote or regional community, I've been signed up to Centrepay by the business I've gone in. Now, a lot of digital exclusion. I might not have a phone. I might share a phone with family members. I might have my own, don't have a computer at home. I can't see the deductions coming out. I just know how much money I get in my bank. I have to go into the local Centrelink office. Maybe that's a 3-hour drive. Maybe that's a 4-hour drive to get the information. I could ring up and sit on hold forever and maybe find out. But the problem with Centrepay is there's this digital exclusion that goes with it. It needs to be more transparent so those people who are signing up through a business know what's coming up. So they get real live information like text messages so they know that they've signed up. So if they haven't been the person that signed up and somebody else has inappropriately signed up for them, they get immediate information to know that somebody has used their account. But there is not enough checks and balances in place currently by Centrepay. There's not enough visuality currently in place by Centrepay, all things we're working towards, including an actual complaints process where somebody can access a complaint, put a complaint in and get feedback on their complaint, and that complaint is actioned. This is all about the reforms we need. But it is Centrepay, it is buy now, pay later, it's pawnbrokers. It's all about so easy to sign up, so hard to see what's going on, and so hard to extract ourselves from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And First Nations people, people say, why don't you go to the bank and get a loan? Because, as Jackie said, you go to the bank, there's a lot of shame. It's like, tell us all your business. And there's a lot of assumptions that the person sitting in front of you understands all the paperwork and the terminology you're using.
And if you're in a regional area, the banks are all closing, which makes it that much harder. I hate to speed you along, Bettina. I'm really conscious of time, and I have got one final question. Did you have any last remarks in that one?
Probably one that leads to your next question, so I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's hopefully a quick one. I'm going to ask for a 2-minute response. Acknowledging a lot of wins recently with the enduring resolution for ACBF, ASIC's regulator action against urban rampage, and the Better Banking Project as well. Asking both Bettina and Daniil, can you talk about safer systems? I'd just love to hear what's your big takeaway. How can we make businesses safer?
First of all, I have to say banks and other financial service providers have to stop saying, well, we don't know if our client's First Nations or not. There needs to be change. They need to give the people the option to self-identify their First Nations. And then they can provide the appropriate services, scaffoldings and support for them to engage safely in the system. They need to make sure that if they're closing banks, they know how many First Nations people are going to be impacted, and they put things in place that are accessible and usable. Bank by Post is not that. Digital apps are not that.
Yeah.
We need to be inclusive, not exclusive with our banking. We need to be inclusive with our superannuation as well. Superannuation is essential. We all use it. We need to make sure that we have First Nations dedicated lines in banks and financial services like superannuation so that people can access it, and that there is a culturally appropriate person on the other end of that line helping them guide through the system and explain, understand it, and make their money accessible throughout financial services.
Thank you, Bettina. Big takeaway. Ask people if they would like to identify as First Nations. Daniil, can I ask you the same question? What's your big takeaway?
Thanks, Shelley. It's a great question. I think strong regulatory action where there's misconduct and there's harm occurring, sending that really strong, loud message that this will not be tolerated and action will be taken is really important. I think as some of the areas in the report touch on, sometimes that harm or misconduct doesn't fit squarely with one regulator, and that requires really strong cross-regulator collaboration. And I think we can all improve on how we do that and the effect that has on the ground in terms of real outcomes. I think, as Bettina touched on, looking at what data there is and doing a deep dive, thinking about what kind of proxies can be used. And that's something we did really well in the Better Banking project, and it's resulted in really great positive outcomes. Something else that project did as well was looked at policies and processes for improvements, those broad brush approaches at a national level where you don't think about how far does that person have to travel to get to a bank branch to actually affect change or to access a product that might be appropriate for them. Those broad brush approaches don't work. People and industry need to think about who their consumers are, where they're located, and then have appropriate processes and systems that reflect their location and their circumstances.
And I suppose if they're asking their clients if they like to identify as First Nations, then that's a really great first step in able to achieve all of that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Look, I acknowledge we do have a couple of questions in our Q&A, and however, we've gone over time. So I would like to propose that we'll respond to those questions offline and send a response to those people if everybody's happy with that. And I just want to thank all of our panel members, Nerita, Louisa, Steph and Tanya for your great emceeing as well, Andrew for your tech skills, and the whole policy and campaigns team for all of their support and contributions to the report. Thank you everyone online for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.